We need to go to the bullpen. Hello, baseball fans around the world, and a big welcome to the first postseason Highland Bullpen. Yep, that's it. We're here already. Can you believe it? Another fantastic MLB regular season has come to an end, and now we're down to the real important crunch time of the season. And against all the odds, the Seattle Mariners will be carrying the flag alone for the Highland Bullpen teams after the White Sox just failed to make it to the postseason. The Red Sox are a season to forget, and the Tigers kind of tigered again. But before I get to be all boastful about the exploits of Seattle's finest, let's get a quick roundup from the rest of the Bullpen Bros. Alan, I hope you don't mind a little bit of a wee joke there at the expense of the Tigers, but it has been, it's fair to say, not the season you were hoping for.
Probably didn't even realise that was a joke, Richard. I thought that was like a factual journalist comment there. 100%. We had a little bit of hope and optimism moving into 2022. 2021 showed some hopeful signs under new management. A few big signings came in, but no, it fairly quickly fell apart. And the target for the last few weeks really was to avoid 100 defeats, which we've managed to successfully do. Possibly a wee highlight is it will round the season off tonight playing against a playoff team as we over in the West Coast with your Mariners, having been beaten last night. I think we're on 95 defeats, 66 wins. Not been great. Let's talk about Miggy. 3,000 hits. Not many players get to that. He got his 500 home runs previously, but it's 3,000 hits over his career coming in the 2022 season. So well done to Miggy Cabrera. A wee bit of a highlight. He's 39. He's still coming in there as a designated hitter. Younger than Alan McGregor, the Rangers goalkeeper. Less grey hairs, but still able to perform a wee bit. And there's maybe a little bit in there that says to us, let's not discard the old guys. Let's sort of see how things go. We at the other end of the spectrum, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green. Spencer made over 100 games this year. Riley just underneath that, but both put up decent numbers. Age 21, 22. Akil Badu, 23. So there's a few young guys in there that we've got to hope they're going to come through and give the Tigers a little bit of hope in the hitting side as we go forward with the young guys. Pitching, Tarek Skubal, he's currently on the injured list, but he came up with 7 wins, 8 losses. That was the top performer for the Tigers then as well. Alex Lang, I think, had 7 wins in a relief position, but Tarek is a starting pitcher. And that starting rotation has pretty much changed completely from what the Tigers starting rotation was when we started taking a closer interest 2 or 3 years ago. So not entirely sure what that says, but let's look forward to 2023 and let's see how much we can enjoy watching the playoffs without the Tigers being in there.
Yeah, and I guess, Alan, that is one of the beauties of baseball, isn't it? That even in a year of disappointment for your franchise, there's always those individual success stories, and there's also those little buds of hope as well. I can hear it in your voice again, Alan, and I've no doubt that come the spring, you will once again be confident of a great year for the Tigers as well. Thank you, Alan. Now, I did mention that probably the Tigers out of our 4 teams are the only team that might have been more unlikely than the Mariners to make it to the postseason. But I think it's fair to say, Dave Jr., that you rightly had high hopes for the Chicago White Sox. They seem to have all the tools to have a big season this year. So where did it go wrong? And are there any kind of rays of light that the White Sox and all the fans in Chicago can look forward to for next season?
Well, there's certainly a lot of tools, Richard. I can testify to that. So the season was definitely a real disappointment. And yeah, one thing when you're talking about going forward, they are pretty much going to be left with the same squad. Tony La Russa, our manager, has retired just the other day. Again, a lot of health reasons, but fair play to him. He stood up and he could have quite rightfully just walked away from the game. He's a Hall of Fame manager. I think he's managed the second most amount of games ever. He's a very beloved character at a lot of teams across the MLB. And he could have just walked away, given his age. He's pushing 80 now. But he did actually stand up and say it's not just health. He said his own performance as manager, he hasn't given the White Sox what they expected and what he expected in the last 2 years. So I think that's quite a lot of credit goes in there. Quite honestly, we've not really batted too well this season, and it came down to it was a decision that the White Sox consciously made in spring training. Was about getting hits rather than a lot of power, which the team has been built around, and it just hasn't fallen through into run producing, I'm afraid. We haven't hit the old long ball for many a year now, and it's not been helped by this season either. So we've got a team that's pretty much packed with a lot of what is deemed really good talent, but they're all in long-term contracts. So whoever comes in will either have to kind of work the magic with some trades in the front office or get a different tune out of these players. So it'll be very interesting to see how we progress. Pitching has been pretty good this year. It's been okay. It's not been stellar by any means. Dylan Cease is well in shot of the Cy Young Award. There could be a real good chance there, although I think someone like Verlander personally might just kind of run away with that. Again, our performance in the division, we're going to end up pretty much a 500 team. So to those out there, 162 games, we're pretty much going to win half and lose half. So we're 81 for 80 just now. So regardless of what happens tonight, our position is second in the league is confirmed, but it's just not been good enough to challenge Cleveland, who are in the first year of their kind of new franchise, their new name with the Guardians. And I should probably be a bit bitter about my rivals going into the postseason, but to be honest, they've got a great pitching lineup. I think we're all fans of Bieber. They've got Tristan McKenzie, another few ones in there that I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but they've got some really strong players. Ramirez, Josh Naylor. They really have a really fun young lineup that not much was expected of this season, but they're a good team. And I think it's Terry Francona manages them, and he comes across as a bit of a good guy, a real baseball guy. So I kind of wish them all the best marching on. I'm not sure who they've got in the postseason, but in terms of the White Sox, it's one to file, and again hope for maybe a bit of investment, some new blood going into 2023, and the possibility of getting along to even see a game.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. It was a really comprehensive rundown on, a kind of strange season for the White Sox, all told. As you say, I fully expected their bats to be on fire and for them to be, get racking up a lot of big scores, but that kind of transition to the kind of the hits rather than homers, I guess, didn't really work out for them. In terms of colours of socks, let's trade the white ones for the red ones and the pride of Boston. The Red Sox this year, Yorkshire Dave, it's another case of what might have been.
Yeah, they're looking back. I got a call from a good friend of the Highland Bullpen, Rob Fontenot, who runs the Astros baseball podcast, very successful, and very kindly had me on as a guest on his show. And we had a very good chat generally about baseball, which pressure's on when you're speaking to someone who's just an expert, not just in the Astros, but in baseball. But we haven't got along extremely well. And he finished off by saying he knows the Highland Bullpen, he knows our 4 teams, and he said, how do you think things are going to end up? And I said that I thought the best chance of playoff position was the White Sox. Red Sox are always hopeful. Then the Mariners and the Tigers, who I would expect them to improve and possibly have a winning season. And he said, he just simply said, I agree with that. So that just shows you about predictions, you know, and, you know, I'm upset about the Red Sox season, and I'd like to see the White Sox, you know, get there because I think they've got some great players. But yeah, really pleased for the Mariners. And the Tigers, you know, I've always got a soft spot for the Tigers, having been to the old stadium. Their time will come, surely. But you know, as for the Red Sox, I mean, there's no getting away from it. They finished last in their division, and they have a losing record. And you know, Alex Cora was interviewed quite recently. He said he said he's not worried. I think he's a good manager. I think he's the man to take us forward. He says we just, you know, it's almost stating the obvious, but we need to compete against division rivals, and this is becoming even more vital as Baltimore Orioles are now got a winning team. So not only have you got the Yankees, who you know, poised to go pretty much all the way this season and looking really good, you've got the Rays and the Jays. So yeah, it's, you know, it's gonna be tough, and you're looking for positives. That just happened before to the Red Sox this century, and they've won, you know, 4 championships this century. They've finished bottom and they've bounced straight back. But you know, you wonder about the organization. They do spend money, but have they spent it wisely? You know, what are they going to do about the free agencies and Bogarts and Devers? 2 players that you really surely we've got to re-sign for next season. Bogarts especially, I think Devers has got another year, but really get them tied up. And then you're looking at pitching, they need to do something about that, because I don't think there's many teams in the whole of MLB who've probably got a worse ERA. But positives, they brought a young guy through, Brian Bayo, who looks like he's going to be a great starting pitcher. He's got to be in the rotation for next season. And first baseman who's got a bit of power, Tristan Casas, who plays first base. He's hit 5 home runs out of 75 at bats. That's on target for 40 home runs in a season, I think, if you look at the at bats. So, you know, you've got Whitlock and Tanner. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but good manager, good organization, and they can bounce back. But good luck to them. Go Mariners.
Thanks, Yorkshire Dave. And it's it's good to have the support of the bullpen. I know I'd be the same if it had been the White Sox, the Red Sox, or the Tigers sitting in the playoff position as we are now. And I guess for me, I'm just delighted to be there. Clearly, along with every other Mariners fan, it's 2 long decades it's been since that 2001 Mariners Odyssey, in which they racked up 116 regular season wins. And, you know, their dreams were only dashed by the Yankees that year in the American and the AL Championship Series. So it's great to be there, but you get greedy, don't we? All with sports fans, we get greedy. Once you're there, you want to go that one step further as well. And for us, it's the Blue Jays. In the way, I'm a little bit disappointed, like about 10, 12 games left in the regular season. I had hopes that we'd be able to take the home advantage. It looked like we had a kinder run in. It looked like the Mariners had the opportunity to make up that gap. And then we talked about before, I know sometimes it's not just who you're playing, it's when you're playing them. So, you know, teams had a chance. The Red Sox clearly were already, I think, thinking about the end of the season, to be honest, Yorkshire Dave, and they didn't put up the resistance that they normally would. The Tigers, a couple of high-scoring games, Alan. The Tigers are certainly won the Mariners close, but we now have to win in Toronto, which is, I think we've played them 3 times in Toronto this season, and we lost 2 and 1-1. We swept them in Seattle. So you can see that's partly why I was so keen to get them back here. But you know what? 3 games, Seattle have proved they can do it. They can win in the big occasion. You know, we're sitting here in October. Midway through June, the Mariners looked a long shot to be in the playoffs. They were kind of, I think that at that point, they were something like 29 wins, 39 defeats. And Scott Surveys was the favourite for the Axe, you know, amongst all the MLB guys at that time. So we turned it around. You know, we beat the odds and came back. We finished with a nice, strong, you know, a strong winning record. And it's now a case of, can we do it in Toronto? I think we've got a good chance. I think we need to pitch better than we've pitched of late. We've given up too many runs. But again, I don't want to read too much into the closing stages of the season, because I think it will be different once we get going for those games. But in terms of why people should support the Mariners, I'm obviously going to encourage people to do that. I know you guys are already converts. In some cases, not much conversion was needed. But the Mariners have done this on a relative shoestring among all the MLB teams. I think they have their budgets, they kind of certainly in the lower half. And I think it's something like, I think only 8 or 9 teams have spent less than the Mariners have. The vast majority of teams that made it to the postseason have spent a lot more, in some cases more than double, the likes of the Mets, for example, and others have spent more than double to get there. So the Mariners haven't bought their way into this position, that they've earned it, and have done it the hard way with some good baseball and getting the results when it mattered. I do wonder what Ken Griffey Jr. makes of it all, obviously now back in his executive position with a franchise that he was such a hero for. And now you've got the new sensation, Julio Rodriguez, who I really can't wait to see, because I think if he's going to be as good as we think he can be, these are the kind of occasions where people make their mark. When he's already on his way to becoming a fantastic player, this could be a chance for him to really take that next step. So from your perspectives, having seen the Blue Jays against your respective teams during the season, any advice for the Mariners? Anything you've noticed or anything you think about the Blue Jays or about the challenge that Toronto offer?
Tricky one. I think they seem to have a happy knack of finding a way to win. I think if you look at the pure numbers, which are kind of lost at the moment, their sort of runs for and runs against are quite close, aren't they? And the way they finished up in terms of the win record was about as expected. Against is it the Blue Jays that they're playing in the sort of playoff game? I think that's a really tough ask for them. And I don't think I've got any advice. Just hopefully, J-Rod, as we're calling him, does his stuff. You look at his numbers, and is it his rookie year? I think it is, isn't it? What he's got, he's not far off 300.
Yes, it's a rookie year.
Yeah, not far off the 300 average, 20, almost 30 home runs. He's not far off that. What used to be thought of as 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases. He's not quite there, but he's not far off. And his rookie season, he's only 21. I hope he's going to be a real star of the postseason.
Dave Jr. Sorry, I nipped away from the camera there for a second. For any of you watching on YouTube, which is not available, so you can't. But did you speak about the fact that Toronto, there's a possibility, could that cause any concerns for Seattle with the games being in Canada, Richard? Do you have any players that can't enter the country, as an example?
I don't think so, Dave Jr. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, again, that do Toronto have home advantage in the game?
They do. They do. All 3 games,
if there are any Mariners, that will miss out, I know that has caused concern for some teams, including the White Sox, throughout the regular season. So it's just something that it's an extra X factor in there. Having those games in Canada, even the distance to travel, I don't know if that makes much of a difference. But in terms of the White Sox, I think I had a quick look there. We went 2-4 against Toronto this year. So definitely on the losing side. I don't remember being overawed by them at any stage. We've probably got a losing record against a lot of teams this year. But again, we played Seattle. I think you're a good outfit. You've performed really well throughout the year, verging on about 90 wins. I don't think there's anything to be scared of in the Blue Jays at all. It's probably quite like for like. I don't know if you've covered it yet, but if you do win that game, I think you've got the likelihood of facing Houston. And I think Houston are just kind of terrific. They're quite an outfit to watch. They're quite intimidating to come up against. So I think I'm sure it would be a huge win for Seattle to get to that stage anyway of the ALDS. But no, I wouldn't be intimidated by the Blue Jays unless again half your team's missing for kind of COVID reasons.
No, exactly that. No, I think it's good insight there, Dave Jr. as well, and it's yeah, I think it really is. I was mentioning that the Blue Jays hold a 2-1 advantage over Seattle in games in Canada this year. In the 3 games they've played, Seattle swept them in the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, absolutely, I would put good money. I'd certainly put your money on it being 2-1 either way in that series. I think the chances of it being, a simple victory for one or the other are remote. I think it'll be a closely contested 3-game series, and I'm just hopeful that Seattle can pick up the 2 wins they require to take them. And yeah, the Astros lying in wait. The Astros have had Seattle's number generally, but again, I'm a great believer once you get into the postseason, and particularly if Seattle can put their recent indifferent form behind them. I think the lift, we've talked about this before actually, the lift that teams get if they can win that initial playoff game series, and actually that can give them a real burst of adrenaline and actually take them past teams that you would think would normally be too good for them once you get to that divisional series. So it's certainly all to play for. Alan, I know you've, as a recent visitor to the great city of Seattle, I know you enjoyed your spell over there and got somewhat of an affinity to the Mariners as kind of a second team, obviously a distant second to the Detroit Tigers, but still a worthy second team. So you'll presumably be hoping that they can emerge victorious from their visit north.
Are the Mariners in the playoffs? Yeah. I've always been a Mariners fan.
That's the spirit, Alan. I like that. I remember being mocked by my pals for becoming a Blackburn Rovers football fan. For football reads soccer to our listeners in other countries, and it will surprise no one amongst the group here to guess which season it was that I suddenly decided that the folks that played in Ewood Park were great. Can you imagine which season that was, Alan?
I'm going to make a guess. It was the season they won the championship.
93.
It was a 93. It was Shearer.
Yep, Shearer, Sutton, Stuart Ripley, Tim Sherwood.
Yeah. I wasn't going to mention Sutton, but yeah.
Graham Lasso, etc. Tim Flowers and goals as well. So I still, despite only having deigned to support them for a year or two, I can still remember them. But yes, so that's kind of loyalty I demonstrate, Alan. So it's good to see you're a man of a similar multicoloured disposition.
I think young Dave once made the comment that I've probably got enough crappy souvenirs from various different teams that I can jump into any team I want and say, I've always been a so-and-so supporter. But no, it's I'm pleased. I did 4 games. I saw Seattle. I don't think I've seen that many games in any of my trips involving one team in my life. So on that basis, I feel vaguely entitled to put myself behind the Mariners and go for it. And I think the classic for me was the 2 nights in a row I saw them play the Yankees, where my naive brain saw them, I thought, getting pumped one night. And we might mention one of the chaps who scored for the Yankees that night. But then the next night, the Yankees couldn't score over 13 innings, and Seattle eventually won the game, which sort of highlights a lot about baseball and pitching. And with these wildcard games, I remember the COVID season when we got involved, the first wildcard games were like one-off games. And I think that doesn't fit, to me, the ethos of baseball. So a 3-game series to decide who goes on to the divisional series, I think that's absolutely perfect. I think that gives the experience. There's a good depth in the Mariners. There's also good depth in the Blue Jays as well, but there's good depth in the Mariners there. Do we have any insight as to what a manager does with his pitching rotation here? Because is it like the Ryder Cup where you're thinking, yeah, I'm going to put my best player out first because I know they're putting their best player out first? Or do you think, yeah, I'm going to sacrifice game one because they've got one good pitcher and I know he'll play in game one, and then I know that we'll get them in games 2 and 3. There has to be thinking along those lines, but I guess they employ people in analytics departments and pay them millions of dollars to make those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of the little narrow advantages I think the Blue Jays have secured, because they were guaranteed that slot with enough games left that they could then rest pitchers.
Right.
They could keep their starting rotation, their best pitchers fresh. They were able to do that. So they will have their best arms for those 3 games. Seattle obviously clinched their place in the back of Cal Raleigh's solo home run. A lovely way to do it with 2 out in the 9 as a pinch hitter against the A's. So it was, I'm looking forward to more drama like that. But yeah, I think the pitching will be absolutely critical. Dave Jr.
When is game 1, Richard?
Saturday.
Yeah, so we're recording this just a day or so ahead of the first one. So yeah, it will be a absolutely pivotal. Obviously, the first one, you're either one game away after that, or you're right behind the 8 ball. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I'll hope that the rest of the bullpen will be sending positive energy to Rogers Field and making sure it lands in the direction of the Mariners as well, because I think it's just great to be there. And Alan, I guess, and I hope you will have found in your time in Seattle, it's a real baseball city. It's a big sports city, but it really is a baseball city. They care a great deal about their team, despite its, the Mariners never having won a World Series. So it's deserving. I know I'm biased, but they're very much deserving, the city and their fans.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment. I was pleasantly surprised. I was just flicking through. Surprisingly, I didn't have all these stats in my brain, but I was flicking through some of the stats for the 4 games I went to there. And I was sort of thinking, I had in my mind, the Yankees games were phenomenal, big crowds, exciting stuff. Bizarrely, a game that saw them lose against the Angels actually had a bigger crowd. It was Friday night, which makes a difference. But the regularly getting crowds 30, 40,000 there, it didn't seem to. I was going to come back and say, there was twice as many watching the Yankees games. So that's not actually correct. So big crowd there each time. And yeah, the game against the Rangers I saw was that Tuesday night, possibly, 23,500. But yeah, Tuesday night, you know what it's like if you're turning up for a CIS Cup second round game against lower opposition on a Tuesday night. You're not quite going to get the same crowd. So it was good to see that, because I will say that in the UK we're probably outnumbered by NFL fans, and the Seahawks are obviously a big draw in the NFL. And yeah, the Mariners Stadium's a lot better than the Seahawks Stadium. They're right beside each other. You're walking around and people seem to be wearing more Mariners gears and Seahawk gear. Well, having said that, I was there in season, but yeah, big baseball city. They're certainly into it, certainly enjoyed it. So yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, as we speak, Seattle haven't yet decided on their pitchers, but Toronto certainly have chosen their Game 1 pitcher, and probably a little surprise, it's Alek Manoah, who's been a standout for them this season, likely to be Kevin Gausman in Game 2. I'm not sure who they're likely to choose for Game 3, but as of just now, Seattle haven't decided who's going to be on the mound for that first game as well. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting, and I'm going to predict the Mariners to win 2-1. I think the Blue Jays might win the first game with Alek Manoah's arm, but I think the Mariners can draw level in Game 2. It'll be all to play for in the third game, and I'm backing Seattle to clinch that spot, likely against the Astros in the championship series. Dave Jr., can we get a prediction for you for the Mariners and the Blue Jays?
I shall go 2-0 Mariners.
Even more optimistic than I am. That's why I like to see Yorkshire Dave.
I like what you said, actually, because Manoa, as I've seen, he's done pretty well against the Red Sox recently, unlike most pitchers in the AL East. But I think keeping the Toronto bats quiet will be the main thing for they're pretty hot, aren't they? I was just trying to look at what the runs they've scored this season. So yeah, I'll go 2-1 as well for Seattle.
I think 2-1 has to be the obvious answer. I don't think any of us are going to deviate from wanting and hoping to see the Mariners win. So I will also pitch my hat in at 2-1. I think that lad you mentioned who's pitching for the Blue Jays in the first game, is he a young rookie possibly who's made a bit of a decent start to his career? So he's getting a lot of good feedback. So we'll let him win game 1 and we'll let the Mariners win game 2 and 3.
That sounds good to me. I'll certainly take that. More than happy to accept that. Beyond the Mariners and the Blue Jays, obviously we're in the largest postseason in history in terms of the number of teams involved. Neither the Blue Jays or the Mariners will be favourites or close to it amongst the teams that are there. But who do we fancy? Who do we think at this stage? We made our pre-season predictions, and there were a couple of them are still live, but now we know who's going to be in there, who's going to be fighting it out in the fall, potentially to reach the Fall Classic. Who do we think is going to go all the way? And potentially, this is going to be the latest Major League Baseball World Series in history, partly because of the delay at the start, the week's delay at the start of the season. But if the World Series was to go to a deciding 7th game, it would take place on the 5th of November. So it could
Fireworks,
be a case of remember the 5th. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Fireworks are plenty, potentially. But who do we think will be competing in that World Series then? Who do we like the look of at the moment? We'll start off, I think, with Yorkshire Dave.
You know what? Right out of the blue, for no particular, I'm just going to go Mets.
Yep.
That's my
very
answer.
like. Yeah.
Shortest answer you've ever had from me. I think they're coming good at the right time. They've got a lot of exciting players, and I had like I did last year, I had a bet on Red Sox at the start of the season, just for because I'm a Red Sox fan. I like the Brewers, but they just fell short. You look at the Dodgers and incredible Yankees. I'm just going Mets.
Well, I think the Mets have got a good chance.
The other night, back to back home runs, everything's just sort of seems to be clicking just now for them at the right time of the season. All the players are coming back, and that's who I'm going.
Well, for those I mentioned earlier about Seattle being relatively frugal and not big spenders, the Mets have been the biggest spenders this season. $280 million or thereabouts, just ahead of the Dodgers, with the Yankees in third place. And I do have a soft spot for the Mets. I must admit, something about them being kind of the less storied team of the great city of New York, and obviously the story of the miracle Mets and all that. We all love a good underdog as well. So if you can be an underdog while spending $280 million and more than anyone else, that could be. Let's hear it for the underdog Mets. Alan, besides the Mets, and feel free to discuss them, who else do you think could end up going all the way?
I think I'm going to, when I look at the National League, I'm probably going to say the same as I do every other year and go with Dodgers. They would play the Mets, I think, assuming the Mets win the wild card series. Then the Dodgers will be up against the Braves. I just think the Dodgers, if you're looking at it from a stats basis, I think the Dodgers probably have a more straightforward route through to the World Series than probably the American League teams. Then it's going to be, you're going to, unless one of the wildcard teams can pull it off, you're looking at the Yankees, Astros, and I think on this podcast we would have to look to see the Astros make it through to the World Series as well. So the Astros against the Dodgers, bit of West Coast stuff going on there. Oof. Yeah, let's see the Astros win it again. On the bonfire night.
Yeah, that seems reasonable as well. I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, but we do have somewhat of a liking in the Highland Bullpen for the Astros, not least because of their excellent podcast, which we're always happy to plug because it's great stuff. But there's a lot to admire about how they play the game. Yeah, I'm trying to think beyond the teams you've mentioned. Dave Jr., are we missing any obvious tricks in terms of any outsiders or anybody you think could throw some surprises into the mix?
So my focus would be, again, I really do think the Mariners will progress to play Houston. And I'm sorry, but I think the Astros, whenever I've seen them, they're just such a polished outfit. I would really fancy them going on to the championship game. I do fancy Cleveland to beat Tampa. I wasn't too impressed with Tampa through the year. And I also, there's something in my bones just tells me Cleveland are going to knock the Yankees out. I've got something there.
That's called hope.
Well, I've really disliked the Guardians this year, the Guards, as they're come to be known. But they've got a really young, fired up team, which, again, Terry Francona manages them so well. They seem to never say quit. Nobody really thumps them. I don't see why they would be scared of anyone. Having said that, the all-conquering Aaron Judge, who I think he occasionally makes it onto social media via MLB. His name seems to be on every bloody notification I get on my phone these days. And again, I'm sure we'll come on to Mr. Judge later, but I think Cleveland against Houston in the championship game. And I do fancy Houston going on to make the World Series. I must admit, on the other side of the brackets, so the National League, I'd have to go with form. The Braves' run to this stage has been fascinating. It's been incredible watching them kind of catch up and overtake the Mets. It's been really quite interesting. Again, when you consider they lost their talisman, Freddie Freeman, after last season. But to make it back, and again, they were pretty much down and out for quite some time. When you look at the league graph as to where the distance they've been behind the Mets in that division, they have that's real championship form. And I'd be quite interested in seeing how they got on. In terms of the wild cards, I'm looking at the graph just now, but I can see the Phillies, St. Louis, some real classic baseball names there, but I've not seen them throughout the year. San Diego and the Mets, I've not seen the Mets too much. I wonder if how they ended the season might affect them. So I'd really have to say one of the Braves or the Dodgers in the World Series itself. And I'd probably have to go with the Dodgers. Just they've got so much talent on that team. So I would go with Houston versus LA in the World Series, and I would go with the Astros to pip them. They're the most polished team. I'm a pretty new fan to baseball, but they are just such a polished outfit across the board.
Well, it certainly seems like that would be a cracker of a World Series. I can just imagine those two franchises going at it with all the talent that they have within their respective squads. But as you mentioned there, and you can't avoid him, Aaron Judge overtaking Roger Maris's home run record in the AL, going past Roger Maris's mark of 61 with his 62nd. I know Yorkshire Dave, we never enjoy. Well, actually, some of us don't mind, but you never enjoy lavishing praise on the Bronx Bombers. But you've got to hand it to Aaron Judge. It has been a season for the ages from him.
Yeah, I mean, joking aside, if you like baseball, the sport, I do think we make comparisons with cricket, don't we? And that in the old terms in English cricket, the game is the thing that you love. you support your team, but you want to see a good game. So you go and see a test match, and so Garfield Sobers was playing. You want to see him score a century, but hopefully your team still wins. But you want to see the other guys playing well. And I think that's the ethic of the fans in baseball, and you see it, don't you, wherever you go. And I think Aaron Judge has come over extremely well in the running. I'm really pleased that he's managed to do it, and that is 62. It's not just the Yankees record; it's the AL record, isn't it? It's one or two guys in the National League who have a bigger. Barry Bonds hit over 70, didn't they? Sammy Sosa hit 60 odd 3 times. Some of these records are tainted. I'm not sure about that myself, but yeah, I'm really pleased he's done it. I quite like the guy, and he's a free agent. Isn't he not at the end of this year? And mad as it sounds, it's not going to happen. But I've heard it said the Red Sox, he wouldn't be averse to going to Boston. It's not going to happen. He's going to be in pinstripes for the rest of his career, I think. But how much is he going to demand in terms of how old is he? Is he 29, 30?
I think that he's certainly round about there, but certainly it's not a bad time when you're just going up for free agency to suddenly hit a record-breaking home run season, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of was looking at I guess we might talk about the other great home run record this year, Albert Pujols, and you look at who might be likely to be the next one to hit 700 if that ever happens. And I was looking at his teammate Giancarlo Stanton, who has currently 378, 13 seasons, age 32. Mike Trout, 349 from 12 seasons, he's only 30. So these guys could do it. You need to do something like 22 seasons. Albert is 42, so, but can you keep going at 10 season, another 10 season, 30, 40 home runs a season? Then you look at Aaron Judge, and I think, what's he got now? So I was joking to myself earlier on today, he's got 62. He's miles ahead of anyone. Schwab's, who I love, has got 46 this season. So he's only 30. So if he does another 12 years at 62, I was joking, so that's 744. He's currently got 220. 220 plus 744 is 964. Could he be the first man to 1,000 home runs? I'm only joking. But this guy just looks to me to be phenomenal. He's a right-handed hitter in a ballpark that's supposed to favour left-handed hitters. He hits the ball both ways. You've seen that thing I sent you earlier today, the 62 home runs in 1 minute, and he's hitting the ball anywhere and everywhere. So good luck to him, I think.
Absolutely.
No, just because it was worth making the comment. Obviously, jumping back to my Seattle experience, I saw Mr. Judge this year, and I have seen one of those home runs live. I should possibly check my various wee videos I've got of games. I don't think I'd have been filming a Yankees player coming up to bat, but witnessing that was good. But then I was then checking his stats for then the 13 innings game where the Yankees didn't score, and just want to see what his record was there. So he'd one hit and 3 at bats, and I was thinking, well, why has he had 3 at bats in a 13 inning game? But he was walked a couple of times.
Yeah.
So as well as being a phenomenal hitter for all these home runs, how often are the pitchers not letting him have a crack at a home run as well? Now it's part of the game, but
Yeah,
it
very good
shows
point.
who.
Yeah, he was, but yeah, he was sort of walked a couple of times at Boston recently. He still managed to get a couple of home runs, but his average is good, isn't it? Because he's not far off. He's in contention for the Triple Crown. He was obviously going to
Yes.
be ahead in home runs, his RBIs, and there's only one other guy who's level with him just now, and he's hitting over 300 in the average. I think there's 2 or 3 guys above him. So he could do that, and that's one of the rarest things. Your man Miggy is the last guy to do it. So that's a really rare event if he manages that. So it just shows he's not just a power hitter. He walks a lot and he hits for average. And he even steals bases, and he's not far off 20 bases on him.
A total package, isn't he? He really is the total package there. But and maybe on a final note, it's nice to reflect on that bit of history this season, because you see history in baseball fairly regularly, different types of history, different levels of history. But to see a man become only the 4th to hit 700 home runs and to join Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, and Barry Bonds, that's a bit of history for the ages, literally for the ages there. And it's Albert Pujols, what an achievement. I'm not sure. We might see somebody reach 700 home runs in our lifetimes, but there's no guarantee. Quite frankly, that's how rare and how hard a thing it is to do. So I think that's got to be surely one of our highlights of the regular season. Yeah, would you reckon, Dave Jr.? Do you reckon that's one that deserves to be perhaps the highlight, or certainly one of the leading highlights of this 2022 MLB season?
Yeah, must be. It's what gets the fans off their seats. Guys like Pujols, guys like Judge, they're to be celebrated. Particularly Pujols, and sorry I missed some of the chat there, but I think he was pretty much down and out a few years ago. His career was over, and I mean his record I think it was September, I'm sure he hit something like 11 or 12 home runs in the month alone, which is just wild. And again, you're not talking about a pitching selection when he's come up against teams who are just throwing him underarm balls. They want to strike him out. It's not charity every night. Yeah. But the guy is strong. He knows what he's doing, and yeah, he's just a fantastic talent. So again, he's a character. Used the term earlier, but I think he's pretty much loved through baseball, not just through what he's done this season, but I think he's just widely loved by the baseball community, and these guys should be cherished. You don't have them for too long, so yeah, enjoy them when they're here. I am a little bit emotional tonight, Richard, I must say. Tonight is probably going to be Jose Abreu's last game for the White Sox, so once we wrap things up here, I'll be going downstairs to watch that game. But it's been a bit of a kind of time coming. There's it's maybe something to talk about another night, but it's quite sad. It looks as if he'll be moving on. And I've only been a baseball fan for kind of 3 or 4 years, but he's my guy, and I think he's another one that you see him interact at first base with every opposition, and he's always laughing and joking with the opposition. I think he's widely respected. An MVP one year, an all-star. He's our guy, and I'm going to actually really miss him. He's probably my first baseball hero, and it should be. I think the word is that he's leaving the organisation after this year. So I'm gutted for a guy like him that he couldn't have got to the postseason and celebrated more success. I think they've let him down in that way, but so sorry, I'm kind of loving all the big hitters tonight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you say, you're no doubt right about this season. But when you look back at what he's achieved in his career at Chicago, there, it's he's been a class act. I think is a phrase that could definitely be applied to Abreu. I think Dave, a class act. Well, we've talked a lot about heroes, in this case a departing hero. New heroes will be made over the next 4 weeks in baseball's postseason as we march towards the Fall Classic and the highlight of the year's baseball action. From my point of view, and I think it's fair to say for my fellow bullpen bros, thank you, Alan, Yorkshire Dave and Dave Jr. for your good wishes. We'll add them to my pile for the Mariners. I really hope next time we're talking about the Mariners' next challenge in the postseason. But until then, whoever you support, whether they've made it to the playoffs or not, have a fantastic week in baseball, and we'll back soon with a Highland Bullpen.